Turning to the story of Gisèle Pelicot now. She's the French woman who is being hailed as a feminist icon after a history-making trial in a courtroom in Avignon. Her ex-husband, Dominique Pelicot, has been sentenced to 20 years in jail for drugging and raping her over 9 years, and then inviting more than 50 other men to also abuse her.
Caméra, recule!
This was the scene outside that courthouse as Gisèle Pelicot departed. The 72-year-old grandmother waived her right to anonymity during the trial and decided to face her abusers. Now, she did not speak publicly during the trial, but she made a statement after the court handed down the sentences.
J'ai voulu, en ouvrant les portes de ce procès le 2 septembre dernier, que la société puisse se saisir des débats qui s'y sont tenus. Je n'ai jamais regretté cette décision. J'ai confiance à présent en notre capacité à saisir collectivement un avenir dans lequel chacun, femme et homme, puisse vivre en harmonie, dans le respect et la compréhension mutuelle.
Let's invite to the conversation now Magali Lafourcade. She's a former judge in France and is now the Secretary General of a Human Rights Commission in the country. Magali, thank you so much for making time for us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
It is our pleasure. This is such a shocking story. And I wonder for you, from your vantage point as someone who cares so deeply about human rights, but also having served as an officer of the courts and the law, what has been your understanding, your perceptions of this trial and these verdicts?
Well, this trial is undeniably historic because when Gisèle Pelicot decided to refuse to have her case judged behind closed door, she tended to politicize her case. And as a result, the case is no longer something like a news story. It's a social phenomenon. And it's exactly the words she said this afternoon. The public were made aware of the reality of what is a rape trial in France, which is quite ugly, because during that trials, the victim faces humiliations, attempts to destabilize her, and it's very common to undermine the victim voice.
Let's dig into that a bit more, Magali, if we could, especially with your expertise as a judge. It was all on tape. The police had so much evidence. So I wonder, what was the defense's argument? What were the men saying?
Well, you're right. It was very unusual to have so many videos and evidence. But, you know, in the French criminal law, a rape is not around non-consent. Non-consent is not the constituent element of the offense of rape. It's about something else. So when the accused explained that they believe in gender stereotypes and they believe in a patriarchal society, and that they believe that if the husband is agreeing to make her wife unconscious, open to other men, it's fine for him. The justice can be very can believe them and decide not to convict them and to consider that it's a rape. So it was quite a success to have all those men found guilty today, because it was not so sure. Maybe you have seen that the sentences are not that high, but it's because there is a huge principle in France, which is the individualization of the sentences regarding what was committed and the history of each of the accused.
So each man was given a different sentence based on the severity of the actions?
On the severity of the action, but also given their ability to understand what they were doing and their history and the trauma they could have in the past. So we individualize a lot the sentences during trials. And many feminists today are a bit disappointed because the range of the sentences are between 3 years of prison and So you don't go to prison, you have an electronic bracelet. And 15, and then there is Gisèle Pelicot, who had 20 years, and maybe will make an appeal on that sentence. So the trial is not finished. It will come again in several years. So the story is not over.
I want to return to this idea you brought up about this understanding of consent. How a woman can or cannot consent, how a man understands what consent is, or the perpetrator of the crime can understand what consent is. And I understand you're one of 500 activists in the country who signed an open letter calling for consent provision to be added to the law. Now, at least in the English-speaking world, this seems, because we've gone through the Me Too movement, consent is so central to conversations about sexual violence, sexual abuse, assault of any kind. What is the issue around consent in France?
Well, first, it's not in the law, and it's not even in the pedagogic program at school, in the educational program. We don't speak about consent, and we want, as feminists, we want to make it a new norm in the society. But today, with this trial, we can see that the society is evolving a lot. It's the first time French society has understood that rape is not necessarily committed by monsters, by outcasts to a person, but by ordinary men. And it is the first time that many men are joining their forces with feminists to denounce a patriarchal society. So the society is really evolving a lot, but the government is not on that line. President Macron said wonderful word when he's abroad, but in France he's not supportive at all to change the law, to make the consent at the core of the law. And we don't have a government currently, and in the past the government we had were not supportive at all. They are very close to very conservative and movement and anti-rights movement. So it's not easy for the society to have political move in that perspective. But in the parliament, there are many forces who wants to make the law evolve and the judicial treatment. But because we have the problem with the law, but we have also a problem with the judicial treatment, and I know that very well. For instance, in 1990, it was the first time in the law that a husband who raped his wife was considered as a crime. Before it was not a crime. And we don't have any conviction on that because these cases are systematically dismissed by the prosecutors.
Magali Lafourcade, thank you very much for your time and for your insights today. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.